All right, let's get into it. You know, we all think we know the story of dogs, right? Some noble wolf meets a friendly human, they become best friends, the end. But the real story? Oh, it's so much messier, way funnier, and it started not with friendship, but with two species that were, let's be honest, just too exhausted to kill each other. This is the real story of how our best friends went from being these terrifying predators to the creatures that now demand belly rubs at 3 in the morning.
And this quote? It just nails the starting point. This wasn't some fairy tale. It was a partnership of pure convenience, forged in total desperation. So forget noble bonds, think of it more like two grumpy neighbors who figure out it's just easier to share leftovers than it is to fight in the freezing cold.
So to really get this, you have to picture the Ice Age. And yeah, not a winter wonderland. It was a frozen nightmare, where just surviving the day was a brutal struggle. Humans were just trying not to freeze to death or, get eaten, huddled around these pathetic little fires. Hope was pretty much off the table, and hygiene wasn't even a concept yet.
Okay, so into this grim scene walks our hero. But he is not an alpha wolf, not even close. He's the runt, the outcast, the one who probably got bullied by squirrels. This wolf was starving, desperate, and was making some seriously questionable life choices. And the biggest one was wandering near a camp full of anxious humans holding pointy sticks. This is it. This is the moment that changes absolutely everything. The wolf gets too close, the humans freak out, and someone, not out of kindness, mind you, but probably thinking, hey, if he eats this, maybe he won't eat me, chucks a piece of burnt mammoth at him. That one single fearful act, it kicked off the entire process of domestication. It was the start of it all. And that one little interaction, it sparked a massive evolutionary shift. See, the wolves that started hanging around weren't the biggest or the strongest or the fiercest. In fact, it was the total opposite. The wolves that really thrived were the ones who figured out a very simple, game-changing truth. Being slightly less terrifying gets you way more free food. And this whole thing happened completely by accident, at least on our part. It all starts with those outcast wolves finding the human garbage pile, which to them was basically a 5-star restaurant. Over generations, the least aggressive ones got more scraps. That unintentionally selected for tamer traits like wagging tails and those big, emotionally manipulative puppy dog eyes. We weren't trying to breed a new species. We were just getting played into creating a professional moocher. I mean, the contrast is just incredible. On one hand, you've got the original alpha wolf, a deadly, super efficient predator. And on the other, you have what was starting to emerge around our camps. These proto-dogs, these wolf-shaped disappointments who were absolute masters at looking pathetic to score a snack. Evolution had just created the world's first professional freeloader. But eventually, these freeloaders actually started to earn their keep. Humans slowly began to realize that their loud, anxious new roommates were surprisingly useful. They weren't just eating trash anymore. They were becoming a pretty key part of the camp's defense system. And this was basically their job description. Their number one duty, bark. At predators, at strangers, at shadows, at a suspicious-looking rock, at their own tail, literally anything. It was the world's first security system, and while it probably led to some serious sleep deprivation for a species used to just, listening hard for trouble, it was revolutionary. So pretty soon, they graduated from security guard to full-on coworker. Hunting in the Ice Age was miserable work, but with dogs, it became, slightly less miserable. The dogs had the noses, the ears, the endless energy. They'd chase the prey, track it for miles, and do all the dangerous legwork, while the humans kind of casually followed behind, ready to show up at the very end. It was chaos, for sure, but hey, it worked. But the final crucial step in this whole domestication process was this right here. One brutally cold night, some dog must have decided it was done sleeping on frozen dirt and just walked into a human shelter. The humans probably protested for a minute, but then the temperature dropped and they realized, hey, a 50-pound fluffy space heater is actually pretty nice to have. And that was it. Dogs were officially in the family. So as the Ice Age finally thawed and civilization started to pop up, dogs walked right into the spotlight with us. Their journey just accelerated like crazy, going from a simple survival tool to a symbol of power, divinity, and wealth. You can literally trace this incredible rise through history. They went from being a glorified garbage disposal and guard in the Ice Age to being worshipped as actual gods in Egypt. Then they became muses for philosophers in Greece, then both soldiers and fashion accessories in Rome, and finally, they hit peak pampering as nobles in the Renaissance. What a career path! Oh yeah, in Egypt, dogs totally hit the jackpot. They were linked to Anubis, the god of the afterlife, and were often mummified and buried with their owners. Some were even shaved into these elaborate patterns, because apparently, even thousands of years ago, humans were making some questionable grooming choices for their pets.
Over in Greece, dogs were everywhere, especially hanging around the philosophical schools. Mostly just sleeping through lectures on the nature of truth, I imagine. But they also inspired a whole philosophical movement. The Cynics, whose name literally means dog-like, admired dogs for living simply and, well, for barking at all of society's nonsense.
The Romans, of course, tried to turn everything into a weapon. They put these massive mastiffs in spiked collars and armor and sent them to the front lines. But at the exact same time, Roman nobles were keeping these tiny little lapdogs that slept on silk cushions. It was the ultimate duality. A dog could be guarding an entire empire, or it could just be judging you from a pillow.
And this quote from a Roman pet's tombstone just shows how incredibly deep that bond had become. This isn't just about a pet. This is a cherished member of the family. The emotion here feels so modern, it proves that the connection we feel with our dogs today is thousands and thousands of years old. So, after this whole incredible journey, we have to ask a really fundamental question. We always talk about how humans domesticated dogs, but when you really look at all the evidence, you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, we've got it completely backward. I mean, this was their formula, and it was devastatingly effective. They conquered humanity with a simple three-pronged attack. Be ridiculously cute, provide unconditional emotional support, and of course, master that intense, unblinking stare they give you when you're eating. It's a strategy no empire in history could ever hope to match.
So let's just analyze the final deal here. What did humans get out of it? Unconditional love, loyalty, protection, all great things for sure. But what did dogs get? A warm place to sleep, an endless supply of food, and an entire species catering to their every need and telling them they're a good boy. When you lay it out like that, you really have to ask who got the better end of this bargain.
But you know, here's the most incredible part of this entire story. Dogs were never forced into this. They weren't captured and tamed against their will. That first scrawny wolf and all the millions that followed made a choice. They decided to stick around because something about our chaotic, messy, complicated human lives just felt right to them. And that really leaves us with this one final thought. In the beginning, we gave a pathetic, starving wolf a scrap of food and a warm fire, and we thought we were saving it. But in return, they've given us thousands of years of loyalty, protection, and this beautifully uncomplicated friendship. So when you look back on it all, who really rescued who?